Good to see you.
As a process. I don't want
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for attending a fun class today. I will not be doing any group work, so do not worry. You do not have to match up with anybody, so that'll be fun. I'm Jeff Mahler. I have been with the Capital Partners office for 15 years now. Been in the business 15 years, so I was incubated here and flourish here. So we got a great office. I'm an individual agent, so I'm not on a team or a group. So in terms of how I structure things, it may be completely different from what other people do. There is no right way. I am not an authority by any means in real estate. They just have me in here because they couldn't find anybody else. But I'm going to go through a little bit off course. I don't follow models, obviously. So with that being said, I'm not going to necessarily verbatim go off of the packet because a lot of it's just minutia. And I think what's really going to make this fun is after, going through some things, we actually have dialogue. So do not be shy about asking questions. There's no stupid question in real estate. I tell all my clients that. Sometimes that helps, but then you find out there may be some stupid questions in real estate. So we'll get there. And then in terms of just talking through things, I can break down as much detail as you want or kind of breeze through what I do initially, and then we can go from questions from there. So open forum, I like it that way. It makes this a lot more easy to do. So starting off, in terms of the packet, we'll kind of follow at least the guideline to it. So in terms of what to do when you get the listing call. Now, obviously, before that, a lot of it is how do you get listing calls? So I do a lot of heavy farming. That's kind of like the basics. And I know that Jamie told me that you already had a farming class. Is that
We had a
correct?
marketing class.
But did
to
you talk about
discuss
farming?
We did.
Okay, so with farming, I do 3 different avenues. One of which is I hired a company. It's called Agent Mailings. You can go on their website, it's agentmailings.com. And what you can do is pull certain districts and you pay for those districts. And based off the way that they subdivide it, they can do it by subdivisions, or if you're looking in areas like Old Worthington, for example, or Clintonville, there really aren't subdivisions. There's areas, but not specific. So they will do it in clusters. And based off the numeric amount of how many homes are in those locations, you pay a different fee for it. And they just structure it by how many houses there are. I do probably about 5,500 different areas within the 43214 and 202 district that I farm. And that's just based off of my market share, which is about 57% in the area, which is based off the gross volume. So with that being said, the way that I go off of what to pick is the turnover rates. And it's a simple mathematical equation is you take that cluster of how many homes are there and just what the yearly average is. So not 1 year, I go 3 to even sometimes 5 years to see. And if it's over a 20% turnover rate, then at that rate, I know that there's a healthy amount of houses that are turning over on a yearly basis, and it's worth your money and maybe your time to invest on getting in there. Now, all of my farms that I comp into usually have over a 35% turnover rate. So on average, you see that there's a lot of sales within those communities. And my whole goal is to not do everything the same. So you don't want to buy just all $300,000 type neighborhoods. I do basically your first time home buyer, your step up neighborhood. And then I take the risk of doing more high end neighborhoods as well for those downsizers. Now, the risk and the reward with that is that there's a longer period of time in those higher end neighborhoods that people live in those homes. However, based off of the consistency behind farming, I get good results in terms of most of the time when they get to the point of selling, they do call me just because they've seen me in the neighborhood for such a long period of time. Now, it sounds great when you talk about having to purchase things and all of the money that goes into it. When I first started in the farming arena, I went door to door and passed out everything just to save on postage, but also to learn the neighborhoods. It's kind of funny when people call me for a consultation and before they say their name, I kind of know who they are just based off of stalking, but also, oh, I remember walking those streets and I remember that house and you live next to so-and-so, and you can connect that way pretty quickly. Or they just think you're Rain Man, which during ages, some people may not even know what the hell Rain Man is. So that joke kind of runs flat sometimes. But with that being said, it's a mathematical equation, which a lot of people just start. They're like, oh, I know there's a lot of houses that sell in that neighborhood and that's what I do. That's a risk. What I would say is you really want to calculate how much you want to project and spend and make sure that there's at least a decent turnover rate. Now, the fun part is your competitors as well. I will not get into an arena in terms of a subdivision and spend a lot of money in it if I know that there's someone who has more than a 50% market share in that neighborhood. It's not to say that I'm scared to have competition, but there is a lot of different housing out there where you can dominate to that level as well. So you kind of have to play the areas in terms of what you go about doing in that respect. Secondly, what I always do is reinforce with my listings. So whenever I am selling a property, I will do a new listing card. I will do an in contract card after we get through the appraisal, because I know that 60% of the risk of it terminating is pretty much alleviated at that point. And then I will do a sold card. And then after that sold card, I will do 3 months following a reinforced card is what I call it. So you mentioned that sale again, and then I reinforce it with all the sales that I have within a 6 to 8 mile radius as well. So you're staying in touch of that one property, which most people will do either a new listing or they'll do a sold card and then they're done. A lot of times we know that 5-second rule when people get paper mails, they look and they throw away. It sucks. It happens. You have to be at peace with that when you're spending that type of money. However, if you can utilize one unit based off of 4 mailings under a consistent period of time, you know that you're at least milking it for as much as you got for it. So with that being said, that's the second type of, I would say, mailer or farm piece that I do. Now, the biggest thing that you want to make sure that you can link up with is either a print marketing company, which are generally a little bit more expensive, or you can have an awesome title company like Melissa Fryerman in the corner there, who's the sales rep for Northwest Select, who is really great about hooking you up with resources that not necessarily are at a huge discounted rate, but can assist you in some help with marketing jointly, which does help with the budgets if you're just starting this process. But when I first started in the business, I had probably a marketing budget of like 10 grand that I would spend. And I would purposely look to use one of my commission checks basically to just fund that. And it would be my first closing of the year. Boom, you just put it in. Now what I spend in marketing is a little astronomical, but I spend close to about 50 grand. And the way that I budget that is basically in my first 7 to 8, depending on price point transactions of the year, solely fund that account. It does not come as income to me. So that to me is also my built-in coaching system, because I don't have a coach. I don't do well with authority. We're all in real estate. There's a reason for that. But with that being said, it is kind of my way of getting to the point of, okay, I better go out and get those closings so I can fund this budget and be at peace with it, move on, and then start making the income. Any questions so far? Awesome. Yeah.
How much of you doing all these farming things tied to what your last name is? The mailers?
You mean like just public persona piece?
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
I feel like there's a mispun there.
Well, there is a mispun there. I will give you that. Mahler dollar is also my tagline, but we won't go there. A lot of people joke, like Jamie knows, when I'm going out for a listing appointment, I tell her I'm going out to prostitute. It's really bad, but it's the truth. We all are selling ourselves to some degree. So, but with that being said, those are my 2 big clinchers. Now, again, it was a gradual process. It took me some time to build up to that. So don't feel as if you're missing out. I hate going to classes where you hear the people speak and you're like, well, how the hell do I get there? It sounds great. It's awesome. You retain all this knowledge, but what do you do to get there? I think linking up with a title company and having some type of joint venture is always the best way to start that, and then just build off of it from that point forward. I use the ink blot method every year as well, where I'm consistently looking at how things are spreading out. And obviously in this market, if you go in the 214 district, it's going up 13% a year on resale. So what I will do is I will pull an additional neighborhood with a sum of at least 300 to 500 houses and add it to my farm year after year. So that way you're starting to grow and spread out. But when you're doing that, it's within a surrounding community. I don't just basically pick like Worthington if I'm farming in Clintonville. They don't mesh up. But that's how the brand has spread in that respect as well. Any questions so far? Wow, you guys are good. All right, so getting sellers and having that conversation. I will tell you that last year I closed 87 units. And out of the 87, I closed a total of, I think it was 62 listings. So I am usually more listing heavy. I choose to be that way as much as I love buyers. I think in order to build a brand name, you have to have a sign in the yard. That's just always been my philosophy. In terms of where I've gotten my business, I will tell you that last year, 42% of it came from just my name recognition. The remaining 30% was referrals. I've been down on referrals from past clients lately. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that when we take a client, it used to be that within 30 to 60 days, you would close them. Now, on average, with my buyers alone, I'm with them probably 6 to 8 months. And that's just off of an average price point of around 400,000. So again, we know in this market, it's like you give your kidney, your firstborn, and your blood in order to get in there. So that's why you're with them a little bit longer. And that's been the way that I've seen with my business the last 2 years. In 19, that's when I saw, obviously we're in such a great market, but we still had inventory and we're liquidating that inventory and we were good. Then 20 hit and everyone went crazy. And you still had to work off of survival of the fittest. And then 21, we're getting the repercussions, obviously, of the low inventory market, which makes it tough. So who's having trouble when you're going in for listing appointments, competing with other agents? Awesome. You're the only Lone Ranger out of all these people. So you guys are just going in and getting listings turnkey. Don't be shy about raising your hands. So that to me is what I'm seeing an increase of. And today I want to talk so much about not necessarily the listing presentation, but how to basically stand out differently in a listing presentation. I feel like there's so many people who kind of do the same thing that you got to have to basically be a little bit different from the rest, basically. So first and foremost, when you get a listing call, this is where I'm going to start asking questions because a lot of you are already blank facing me and I'm starting to get nervous. Who asks specific questions when you get a listing consultation? So when a seller calls you to schedule an appointment, what do you guys do?
Qualify them there.
Okay, so how do you qualify them? I bet you didn't know I was asking a follow-up question.
Well,
So-
sure. I mean, you can start with kind of just basic finances. Can you sell?
Yep.
Where are you financially? What are you looking to get out of it?
Yep. Okay, who else? Karen, come on. I know
Yeah.
something.
So why are you, the motivation, what's
Mhm.
causing you to move?
Yep.
Price, eventually we'll get there. I like like Zillow says your house is worth this. How do you feel about that?
Love
So you
that.
kind of know, it does work.
It's a good question.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I love those. Like, how would you rate your house?
Yeah.
No one's ever said a 10. So then you ask what would make it a 10, and then they're like, oh, we gotta replace the carpet, we got, so they kind of,
So they beat their house up because they're self-conscious.
right. So you kind of go in, ask them what would, anything that would negatively impact the price that I can't tell on the, they're like, oh, what do you mean? Like, are you near a train track, or
Right.
is there electric pole behind you? Or,
Yep.
Yep.
That's good. Anyone else? Mr. Benninghoffen?
Also their timeframe.
Oh, yeah.
What are they looking at?
Yep.
Also ask if they are also like needing to buy a place.
Yep.
Make sure they're not gonna be homeless.
Okay, so those are all good questions. Now, here's the thing. What are we gravitating towards a lot of those questions? The motivation of just real estate. My biggest thing that I noticed like 5 years into the business is that when I was going into listing appointments, there were times where people were really into my presentation, but there would be a lag time where I would get the follow-up. And the follow-up, I think, is like the hardest thing. What I noticed is I'm a visual learner. And so how people obtain information is a huge key to my success, I feel, because I have broken it down towards an auditory learner and a visual learner. And I take both of those components, which are pretty much the only way you learn unless you're like an idiot savant and you know both ways. I don't know. But at the same token, you're appeasing the way someone is obtaining, obviously discussing the biggest financial gain that they're going to be doing in their lives, probably. So when I get the consultation, I don't jump into the house right away. I will always ask, obviously, how did you hear about my services? And if it's someone who has referred me, great. I let them talk about that person for a little bit while I get their name and look them up as quickly as I can. So whether you're at a desk or you're on your phone, whatever the case may be, I pop in my earbuds and I start the stalking because that's what you want to do. Now, with that being said, I will usually follow up a question of, oh, so you've been there since X, and then they know I'm looking into their stuff. From that standpoint, I then go into the consultation. Right away, I will try and get a listing appointment within 48 to 72 hours of a phone call. A lot of times people are saying, well, I'm not ready for you to come out yet. Does not matter. I will not judge you. There's no judgment here. I still want to come out. I actually like to see houses in disarray so that we can basically objectively look into the house of some possibilities. You don't have to have it market ready at that point. So with that being said, I always go that route. Now, the hardest thing is getting some details. I can't tell you how many times I've had people who describe their house and it sounds either really bad and you go there and you're pleasantly surprised because it's really not that bad. So they're beating themselves up, or these people have blinders on and think their house is awesome. And you go there and you're like, this is going to be rough. So I try to cut that out. Again, my whole goal is to go in for one listing appointment right now in this given market because you really only have the one shot. I used to do 2 listing appointments and it was time consuming, but it assured me that I would always schedule the second listing appointment at the end of the consultation. And we'll go over that because there's 3 different ways that I go about doing a listing consultation. So with that being said, what my biggest aha was during COVID, I now have people send me 5 to 10 photos of the best assets of their home while we are on the call or when we just get off the phone. So that way you can at least get the main picture. And they say, well, I don't know what to take. Well, then take your main rooms. Do you have a finished basement? What's your outdoor living space look like? Kitchens, baths, those type of features that are going to help differentiate maybe that particular house versus the others that are in the neighborhood. If they don't really know what to do in terms of like what rooms to take, which again, you might be dealing with someone's special needs, you're going to have a very, very intense listing appointment, beware. I will have them do improvements to the house as well. So did you just put a new furnace in and they don't know the age, they don't know the make and model, but those type of assets. That's what I do in terms of at least getting some visuals so that I can prep a good market analysis rather than go in blind. Usually it's a fun way for them to experience the house as well, because you'd be surprised what type of photos people feel are more important than others. That to me is how I gauge what to focus on when I'm there physically for the appointment, because they may be appeased by the fact that I too think that their kitchen granite is gorgeous and amazing. And I talk about it multiple times so that they get happy with me. Usually loosens them up and they're happy to talk about things with me. So from that standpoint, I then move into how do you obtain information? This is kind of a weird question to ask, and a lot of times people have dead silence on the phone, so I have to go into a quick example. So what I will say is, say for example, we're talking about your house. Are you visually basically feeling the photos of the house or visualizing the house, or are you talking about the descriptive matter of your house? If you're talking about the descriptive matter, they're analytical. They are numbers people. They usually are detail-oriented people. They hear more auditory in a presentation than they do visually in a presentation. If they're like, I see, large scale rooms that's like 18 by 24, or my granite countertops is open concept, it's beautiful, and they're very descriptive on the phone, then they're a little bit more visual. So that's how I hone in on the presentation matter of what I'm going to present to them. Any questions so far on that? Who uses cloud CMAs here? No one uses cloud CMA. We gotta have a class on that. I'll do that next. What do you use for listing presentations? I mean, obviously you pull CMA on MLS, we get that. But do you use any other resources here? Jamie, come on, you've got to.
Trend graphics.
Okay, I do classes on that. Does anyone know what Trend Graphics is?
No.
Oh my God, don't tell Capital Partners, they're paying monthly for it. So trendgraphics.com, and it's with an X at the end, not a C. You've got to use that. It is huge. So when we go into listing presentations for like analytical people or visual people, it can break down numeric data or the bar graph data and the visual component asset. So what I use Trend Graphics for, and let's actually see if I can get in there real quick.
Does Cloud CMA capture FSBOs?
Yep. So Cloud CMA bases majority of their data not only on MLS, but they pull it from Realis and the county auditor. So if there's transfer, like a private transaction, and that's a record high sale, like right now I've got a house in Old Worthington that we just blew it out of the water, and I literally have no comps. I used Cloud CMA and it pulled 2 private transactions that were record high prices that are going to help support that. I mean, who sifts through the auditor independently to find private transaction sales? Well, she's Rain Woman, not Rain Man, so give her a prize.
I know, but that's enough.
All right, so let's get me off of here. So let's log in and see if they've got auto login because I have all my passwords saved on my computer, so I'm not great.
Who's having fun right now? There's like 2 people that raise their hand. You guys are killing me.
I know these are like long, but come on, give me something. All right, why isn't this working? This is completely different than my login. There we go. All right. This internet is not helping me much. All right, awesome. Okay, so this is what Trend Graphics is basically. You have market data and then you have broker data. Actually, I'm going to take you to the broker screen real quick. So why is market data and broker data different? If you're competing up against a listing appointment, the broker side of things will help break down your personal market share and your competitive market share in terms of other brokerages. So if you want to say Keller Williams versus Remax has an 82% market share versus Remax 13% market share, it helps reinforce that. As a new agent, it can be beneficial to use the actual market center statistics if you yourself don't have your own independent statistics yet. It still reinforces that what they are hiring quality-wise is supported in terms of market share, which to some people can be important. To others, it may not be something that you use. I use the market share data in terms of when I go into a listing appointment where they've called me off of a reputation. They're obviously getting marketing details from me or getting something of substance where they've heard my name. And that kind of helps seal the deal if they don't like me personally. So that was also a joke. Geez, people, you're killing me. All right. So KW staff and the password is Wilson Bridge, or KW Cap Agents is the market information. I'll follow this up and Rachel will send you passwords and emails just so you have it all.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Rachel may not like it, but that's okay. All right. So when you're in here, this is where you can pull it. So you'll see in the top left-hand corner, they have facts and trends. So this is all market data that's here. So scrolling down, it's very similar to the MLS. Let's just use a pretty basic example. So we'll do single family homes. And I like to use zip codes. I don't like to use areas just because it can miss or it's mismarked a lot of the time. I'm going to fall over. Let's just use POW, for example. All right, so you go down, we're going to pull POW. We're going to do single family properties only. And then we're going to use a healthy price range of, see, like 450 to 6. All right. So you could put particulars in here if you're doing like a subdivision. The way that I also use this is to answer 3 questions. 1, the ebbs and flows of the market, which I'll show you. 2, what houses look like either in a subdivision, in an area, or the entire quad itself. So you can pull this and manipulate it however much you want to. So with that being said, when you pull show the chart, come on. All right, so here's what it'll pull you within $100,000 spread in the district of 065, what this market looks like.
Wow.
Another question, what this answers, not only with the ebbs and flows of the market on a monthly basis, this will also show you data that may answer the question for the consumer of when is the right time to put the house on the market. Do you want to be on when there's a little bit more of an influx of traffic, or do you want to be on the market when there's absolutely nothing to compare your house to? This helps in that regard. The other thing that helps with this, if you don't necessarily want to bring this to a presentation if the results itself are not favorable, but you want to come off as the market expert,
and provide statistics and market data that maybe just verbally come to mind rather than having to look at a piece of paper and be able to describe it to someone who's looking at the exact same piece of paper, then you can study the data and be able to go in as a knowledgeable expert that knows what you're talking about because you know all the recent stats with this. It helps that way. If you've got an analytical person and they want to know, list price to sale price percentage in their district, this information will provide it for you. If you have a hard time figuring out what the highlights are for your graph, here are some bullet points. You just click on market highlights right here, and it'll break down what the graph is telling you. So again, it does the auditory version, and then you've got the visual version. Now you can use all different graphs. This is just for sale and sold. If you want to do average price per square foot, because everybody talks about how they price their house and it's always average price per square foot, which couldn't be more inaccurate. But with that being said, this will also pull that particular graph with the data down below. And why it's not showing a picture, I don't know. Average days on market, average price for sale versus sold. So a lot of people are asking, what is the average percentage of above list price offers that this area is getting? This is what that data is going to provide you as well. So literally you can play with this till the day is long and you will get answers to questions that will fully give you a good presentation in terms of visual data, but also analytical data.
Where does that have the market share?
What's that?
Where does it have the market share?
Oh, I'm going to that next.
So good.
Yes. Remember, we have an hour and a half. I have to be able to fill some of this time. So with that being said, that is just the market share information in terms of what's going on in the market. Do you have any questions regarding that or how to use it?
Can you just scroll down so I can see the whole?
Sure can. So this will break down the numbers of the graph itself. So you can pull anything that you want and put it into your listing presentation. I use this for every single listing presentation. It is so helpful. All right, so moving on. So you want to go to broker information. So you're going to go on the top left-hand corner here to Broker Edge Life. All right, so what we'll pull here is, we'll just do a quick example. Let's go back to PAL. All right, so we're gonna do 43065. We're gonna pull single family homes. And then the top right hand corner, we can pull price range again. Let's make this fun. We'll go wider just so that we can get a feel for what's going on in the market. All right, from there, you can do scroll down here where you can do the top broker, you can do top office, or you can do top producer. So if you have market share in a certain area that you want to show off, well, the top producer might be your best bet. If you don't feel confident in that arena, but you want to show off top office, I would suggest doing that over top broker. The reason why I say that is Coldwell Banker and HER are corporate, so they are all under one umbrella for the 50 offices that they have. If you're defining who is a top brokerage in the 065 district, they're going to show up pretty great because they're pulling a wide variety of offices. If you want just independently owned and operated franchises, like it'll pull Capital Partners, Consultants, Classic Properties, then top office is the bet that you want to take there. Okay. In terms of market share, you can pull this year versus last year. You can do a sales portfolio. So what that means is how many single family homes versus condos or commercial property or whatever this property is. You can specify it as much as you want, or you can go as general as you want in that respect. So what I'm going to go off of is just market share and then timetable. In my opinion, this is extremely important. You don't want to go out too wide because then those numbers get a little bit more saturated. So I pull usually within a 6 to 8 month window. I feel that that's the most accurate market data that we're working with. But for this sake, we do that. If you want to go in, like for example, in Arlington, we all know Coldwell Banker in Arlington right now and Classic Properties have a high percentage of market share in that arena. So with that being said, if you want to go neck and neck and just put 2 brokers in there or 2 top producers in there, you can do it any which way that you want. So it's not to say that you're trying to fluff this, but you can manipulate it so it's actually accurate, because if you do things in general, it may very well catch you at a very bad point where it's not going to give you the accurate data that you're trying to portray to the consumer. Any questions so far? All right, of course not. So with that being said, we're going to pull the graph. We're really talking about high-speed internet here. It's not the office. This is pretty ridiculous. All right, so here we go. So this will pull it. Now, again, this is all just a breakdown in the summary portion of it. If you want to graph it, you can do it here. So use the icons and play with it. A lot of times you can do very different things where if you key in on just the top 5 and then you scroll to that, it will just pull the top 5. So it's very user-friendly, very similar to MLS, but it's a great tool to use when giving a listing consultation. If maybe the MLS data is not on your side, then focus your presentation on the numeric data of the market in general and also your market in general. Any questions? All right, great. I think I have the smartest class ever. So, all right, next step. So when I'm going through the listing consultation and I'm getting the information of how they retain knowledge, the next thing that I go through is when can we get that appointment? And from there, I explain what that appointment will entail. So usually I tell people you're going to have me for about 45 minutes to an hour of your time. What we're going to cover is 3 basic things. 1, the market is going to be the bulk of the conversation that we're going to discuss. So prepare your questions for me when I come to the appointment. 2, we're going to talk about your house specifically and preparations that need to be made. We will go over staging advice, whether I have to give that to you personally or within my sphere of influence of what I will refer resource-wise to you. And 3, we're going to price out your home and put a game plan together of moving forward in that degree. Keep it general in that respect because you may focus on one aspect of it a little bit more heavy than others. For example, I was in a listing appointment last night for 2 hours. I do not want to be in a listing appointment ever for 2 hours. It was someone who's lived in their house for close to 60 years, never sold before. They have no idea of the temperature of this market other than the media says it's hot. Great. Never had a 70-year-old tell me something's hot before. It was awesome. With that being said, it was a very in-depth process. Now, usually I want to cut the fat in that process. And how do I do that? In this market right now, I am giving pre-list consultation packets to my clients before I even go into the appointment. My original appointment used to be very heavy on what I do service level wise and why use me. I have now cut that out of the equation of this entire listing presentation. 1, they've gotten a taste of it based off of either referral, name recognition, brand recognition, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to reinforce that with the pre-list consultation that I give them. So I used to do it in a packet format. And what I would do is while I'm out on appointments, I would just schedule in my calendar to drop off a physical packet of them. What's in that packet? A brag sheet. Basically, my market share, my experience, what awards I've won, what I do differently than the agent. So me as an independent agent versus the teams and groups and how those are structured generally. It's not to knock them down, it's to educate them on what they're going to be getting and receiving in terms of service level. Basically, it's all the pretty stuff. You can format that any which way you want. I've never seen a pre-list packet that was terrible and not useful. But essentially that cuts out about 30 minutes of my appointment time by providing them with that information. Now, with the way times are right now, the benefit to passing it out physically was I got to take a look at the house as well. So if you're pulling an aerial view shot of the house and it's got train tracks and all those things, you see that. But a lot of times we don't show up when maybe the house next door is a complete dump, which is going to be very hard to convince getting top dollar in this market to a certain degree if it looks like crap. So with that being said, I like to take a look at those type of things as best as I can. Now, what I am switching up is I am starting basically a personal YouTube, basically where it's going to be video. And I had a fun meeting with Melissa yesterday about this because she is going to be helping me with this. That or a Linktree account. Do you know what that is? Pretty basic. It's like a website. What you can do is put bullet points on there and it could be your pre-list consultation. You just click on what they want to read through and educate themselves on. Boom, you're done. So that helps break up some of the minutia of the appointment so that I can focus on what I want to be in there for 45 minutes to an hour, which is the market data and basically keeping their interest like I'm doing so well with all of you today. Any questions regarding that? Does anyone do a pre-list packet? Does anyone want to do one now? Okay, awesome. Glad you guys are just eating this up. This is really good.
Is that pre-listing packet pretty standard? Or do you customize that each time with this additional CMA information market data?
That's a great question. So I am going to do video on mine where it's going to be customized to them. And I'm going to say, thank you so much for the phone call. I had a great time talking with you. Maybe relate something personal that we had a conversation about so they know it's not generic. Can't wait to take a look at your property. These features look great. Again, we're going to hit X, X, and X. So I'm going to script it so it is a little bit more personal. Generally, what I gave when it was a packet was a little bit more of just my standard. Click on my desktop, print it off, find it, send it over, you're good to go. And I stole that from Joanne Labuda, by the way. So everything is rinse and repeat in this industry. You just want to modify it to what you want. One of my competitors has taken my farming piece and basically mocked every single thing but their picture. Luckily, my picture from 9 years ago looks really good because my face is a little more pulled back. I've got my Backstreet Boy hairdo going on. And so I still help in the appointment. But with that being said, you do want to customize a little bit, I feel personally. In terms of that next step, that has always kind of sealed the deal in terms of eliminating questions as well. We all know when we're in a consultation appointment, if you get bombarded with multiple questions, that's what you focus on. It throws you off track. My whole goal is to kind of keep the focus and the attention on what I am here to do and not necessarily go over a bunch of questions that are ridiculous. Like, do you like my brown granite or should I get gray vein granite? I don't really care. We'll talk about it later. I'll still get you 15,000 above list price. So with that being said, in the consultation, which we'll kind of hit through next. Closing the deal. That sounds ridiculous. All right, so this isn't going to help much. These packets I told you are not that great. So in a listing presentation, who focuses the most on just comps, or is there something that you think differently that you like to focus on when you're talking market data? Okay, awesome. Who uses pictures or who uses a quick CMA?
Pictures.
Okay, why do you use pictures?
Visual, I used to do a CMA, but now it's just the pictures. One page kind of talks about their house and how it's different from, or, you know, similar to what is sold. And what I see as unique about their house or similar to what is sold. And then the next is kind of what's going on in either the neighborhood specifically or zip code, if it has to be broader or, you know, whatever it may be. I don't know, picture seems just more engaging.
Tells the
It's really
story a lot
talking about
better,
their
right?
houses versus the other houses.
Right.
It's all about them versus, again, like you said, talking about yourself.
Yeah. So here's one thing that I've had, because I'm good, bad, and ugly, is when you show pictures, I used to get a lot of objections of, well, my house is better than that. And obviously in a photography setting, everything looks pretty and it's not necessarily in person. So when we were not in a low inventory market, what I would do is for that hour consultation appointment, I show up about 15 minutes early and at least take them to one competing house physically, like they're a buyer. That way you can kind of go through and you see the property firsthand. You can discuss features firsthand, and a lot of times can do an easier job convincing when you've got the product in front of you that their kitchen's a hell of a lot better than what you think your kitchen is. It's not necessarily to change their mind, but it is to break down that shield that they have, that their house is better than others. Now, we're obviously in a low inventory market. That has become a challenge. I have now suggested when I do a pre-list consultation and I'm getting them on the phone, if you could go to, if there is a surrounding house that is on the market, usually right now I'm seeing that a lot of people are doing open houses because it's very hard for us to get leads that way. I usually suggest that the client will go to an open house of a neighboring property and just take a look at that current market price, that type of retention in terms of how many people are going through the open house, and go be a nosy neighbor and educate yourself on the product that you are competing with and is going to be the newest comp that we're going to use once that goes into contract.
That's been a very eye-opening experience for a lot of clients right now, where it has worked in terms of how to justify my price that I'm giving them. Any questions about that?
Are you finding people are thinking you're pricing too high, like there's such low inventory that they're pricing too low?
That's a great question, because to be honest with you, I'm more of a conservative pricer, but I support that by saying I am not underselling you, I am positioning you. And when I position you correctly, that is why I get generally 33% above list sale values on my listing inventory. Whereas the average realtor gets 11% above listing inventory. That right there brings confidence to the table of my abilities to achieve a higher statistic than the average real estate agent. And from there, obviously it's data that I'm presenting them, it's facts. It does help paint the picture as to why to choose me versus another agent. So it sounds like a brag fest and it's obnoxious, but who else is going to support you than yourself in a listing presentation? So the dog and pony show is always out when I'm in a listing appointment.
I have
Yep.
a question about that. It sounds, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
that you're kind of putting a lowball price on there so you can get more buyers in to see it. And
Sure.
then in theory, you're going to get more above listing price
Sure.
offers.
Well, low is relative, because I will say that not every house is equal to its price. Every person who sees the latest record in their neighborhood thinks that they can get that or more, but their house is not the same product, which is why I reinforce that by trying to get them to go look at the product other than just photos. I will say probably 6 times out of 10, I can get them to go and do the homework I give them, which is to go look at a property or take them to a property. If I cannot, then I go through the listing presentation. And then if I really need to do some convincing because I've got a hard-headed seller, I will schedule a secondary time where I take them out as a buyer and we go look at inventory just within the price range. One, I'm solidifying the relationship. I'm getting more front time in front of them. And I know it's time consuming to some people are like, who the hell has time for this? Well, how many listing appointments are we going on right now? Every little one that you get does count. So I want to stay in front of them and develop a relationship as best as possible. Whether they agree with me or not, they're seeing that I'm doing professional legwork for them, and that will help show that I'm going out and doing things differently than the other maybe 2 or 3 agents that you're interviewing right now who just came in for an hour appointment, gave you the same market data and walked away. See what I mean here about trying to set yourself apart? With that being said, the way that I do pricing consultations is that I stress before I turn that page in that booklet to go over price, this is the price right now. You have other sales going on that are going to change that price depending on when you are going to go onto the market. So bear with me with this data and just keep it in mind that this is tentatively the price I'm discussing. Now, I never bullet point and give one price. I will do a 3-tier trajectory of price ranges. So that way, if you feel like you're going in blind, you pad those numbers. If you go in and you really find that these numbers are not going to reflect that, then I don't necessarily focus on that sheet. What I will say is, now that I've seen your home and we're seeing things that are very different than what the actual market is providing, I'd like to follow up with you by tomorrow and provide you with an accurate market analysis. Are you okay with that? Set the expectation. They know they're going to get the information that they need to know quickly still. And at that point, you're also getting another contact in front of them. You're not just done with your appointment and you're waiting there twiddling your fingers to see if they call you back to say you got the job. So with that being said, with the 3-tier trajectory, usually it's a bottom line number, which is a little bit more aggressive. I don't like to use the word low ball, but aggressive. Middle of the road is, in my opinion, what I could achieve to be realistic based off market conditions. And then the 3rd tier is like, this is a mind-blowing record top dollar price. So that way you're at least hitting all the spectrums that you know you're going to be discussing, regardless if it is true or not. Does that help answer your question with that? Who here has preferred title agencies that they have? Awesome, you should. So net to seller proceeds obviously are the best to use, but also when you're reinforcing numbers, Trend Graphics also helps with that conversation. So I don't always use market data because, again, a lot of sellers think their house is better than what the current market data is. So the statistics will be, did you break your knee?
Yeah, sure did.
Sorry to hear that. We'll call Rachel and I know she's listening right now. Any questions regarding what we've gone over so far?
I guess just with sending somebody to an open house.
Yep.
I assume that's a competitor in your market. Are you worried about them going to see it?
That's a great question. I've thought about that from time and time again. To be honest with you, I'm noticing that there are so many people, and it's not to knock it, but team leads are not a lot of open houses right now. It's usually buyer's agents who are in there. A lot of the buyer's agents are focused on, are you looking to buy? Very rarely do I have people say, are you a neighbor or are you going to sell? Doesn't really happen that way. Now, for me, since I'm more of a listing heavy agent than I am a buyer heavy agent, yes, when I do open houses, it's usually the second week I have something on the market. And if we didn't catch what we need to, which I haven't had that lately, but in 19's market, it was a little bit hit or miss because average days on market were like 10 to 15 versus 24 hours. But with that being said, what I would provide at a open house is, you lay out the materials about the house. Great. You look for buyers. Great. But I have basically additional documents. I used to do like a stand-up portfolio page as well of all the houses that I've sold in that open house's neighborhood. I was reinforcing the fact for the people who are coming that are nosy neighbors that I am your neighborhood specialist. I've sold your neighbor's house. And if they're there just to say, oh, I'm a nosy neighbor, great. You just let me know that you're eventually looking to sell and I am going to keep in touch with you. I get their contact information and I am stalking them. Plain and simple. I don't sugarcoat things. So there's a way to differentiate that where you're at least utilizing the lead that you have in front of you and you're not letting it go to waste. I can't tell you how many times in the beginning of my career where people said, I'm just a neighbor. I'm like, great, I don't care. And I focus on something else. There is no bad lead that is out there. My very first sale that I ever had in my career was someone that I schlepped around for rental properties for a good year and a half. And they remembered me and they bought their house. And since then have bought 4 houses with me because they're addicted to moving and I love them dearly. So with that being said, if that's not an awesome story that I'm sure all of us who've been in the industry and have something relatable to that type of story can say, that you can't let one good lead go unturned at this point in the game. Any other questions? Barbara, you're going to receive a tardy for not coming to my class on time.
Blame it on Mary.
All right, I will. If she wasn't a saint, I
It's
would.
not over now.
Well, it's getting there. I don't know. A lot of these people are not asking questions. I was banking
Well,
on you.
that's why you need me in here.
Absorbing.
That's fair, and I appreciate that. So in terms of that, that's the gist of a lot of listing appointments. They say to give your listing consultation on here. That's going to be kind of tough to do because one, we're not true sellers. You can script practice all you want, but we know that this is a situational business in that respect. My whole goal is to just elaborate on maybe some different tactics that you can pick and choose and add to what you're currently doing right now. And maybe go full circle with what a listing presentation should be in this current market. But again, I'm not the authority. This is just some helpful information. Any questions?
Don't tell me this is the end.
Barbara, what do you want?
Start at 10:30.
Can you? It's Mary's fault.
I guess I appreciate all of this information. I think it's really great. Can you just kind of briefly go over what you do when you get the listing?
Yeah. So like during a listing itself, or like when
Sure.
I'm in a listing
Sure, like, well,
appointment,
what are some of the services that you offer?
in terms of like me as an agent.
You're right, in terms of.
Awesome.
And
So
what makes you different too?
a lot of things make me different. A lot of these people are gonna look at me differently when they leave here. They're gonna be like, this guy's gonna go. For example, when I go to a lot of panels, I've heard the whole thing about don't have a seller walk you through the house. You tell them you're gonna go walk through it and then you'll sit with them at the table. To me, and this is no disrespect to anyone who does that, we're all different here. I think that is a huge missed opportunity to get to know someone. That's like, hey, I'm going to date you, but don't come around. Like, although that sounds great in my past relationships, at the same token, it's just one of those things where that's where I get to know the person. We can make some jokes about things, or you can see what they take seriously. So I am a huge fan of wanting to go through, and I'm like, give me the tour. And usually if they just stand there, then I'm like, most people don't know how to tour their own house. Let's do it together. And we joke and we laugh and we kind of ease that whole thing. When we're sitting at the appointment, the way that I basically define things, that's where I get kind of analytical with my data. So for example, personally, I go, there are a total of 9,785 real estate agents in the Columbus market. I am ranked within the top 1%.
out of the individuals that are 4,272 from last year's statistics, I was the #1 individual agent in the city of Columbus for that year. I have been the #1 individual agent in the city of Columbus based off my market data for the last 6 years in Columbus, Ohio. That's one thing I say, analytical data right there. You got it. When I go through what is the differential of how I operate as an individual agent, when you are hiring me based off the service level that you're referred to, you are getting me from start to finish. Other teams and groups, depending on how they are structured, you may meet with the head honcho who's behind the brand, but eventually you will be passed off to someone else during the transaction period. That is not to knock them, that is just the facts. From that standpoint, how would you like this to go in terms of how you are communicated with, how you have response or rapport with your agent during this process? From there, I go over how I will structure the way that we communicate through this. So I have a day, it's called my deal day. On Thursdays, I will have a personal phone call that you are going to put on your calendar. However, I do not anticipate that you're going to be able to follow that all the time. So you will have consistent communication either through a chain text or email, where I'm going to be giving you day-by-day prospecting information about the house, or how many showings we're getting and what that feedback is, whatever the case may be. But I say you are never to abide by what I am indicating here. This is just setting the expectation of how I will communicate with you. If you need me at any point in time, you have me 7 days a week, any hour of the day, call, text, email, I will
Wow.
be there within an hour.
That is so cool.
That's the
You know,
truth.
I like the fact that you say that, because a lot of realtors say, well, at 4 o'clock, I stop working.
They
and I
have it on their
don't call you back."
voicemail. I would get, I get that
Everybody's
whole
in a
aspect
different
of setting
situation.
the expectation, but I can tell you right now that when I set the expectation of how I communicate with you as my client, and we make a blend of what's the best way that you like it and what's the best way that I do it, they don't call me at 10 o'clock at night unless we're doing a deal. They know that Jeff said he's going to have a phone call with us at 11 o'clock on Thursday. It cuts the minutia out. And a lot of people don't think to do that. You're setting the standard. I set the standard with everything I do. So I won't give you the full dog and pony show, but marketing, for example, a lot of times agents do not describe or justify why they are charging what they charge. They're just saying this is what the commission is. When I go in on an appointment, I will break down, and I've got a spreadsheet as to what my budget is in terms of marketing out of the percentage that I charge. So we're a contractor. You get what you pay for. Why aren't you telling them what they are paying for? So with that being said, literally, I've broken down how much I pay in media on a daily basis. And I provide that information there. A lot of this is like, how the hell do I start and how the hell do I do that? My first year in this business, I watched every single big dog that was in this industry. You can joke, but I lived in the woods at Josephine in Worthington, and Joanne Labuda farmed the hell out of that neighborhood. And I talk about her all the time in my appointments. I love JoJo. But I used to watch all her marketing because I apprenticed for a real estate agent while I was in high school, where I passed out flyers, put signs in the yard. So I knew who she was. At the same token, I watched every single thing she did and how she did it. The same thing goes for a lot of my competitors that are in the industry now. I know their presentations backwards and forwards. They think I don't, but I do. I once asked a client, I said, will you do me a favor since you're already going with me? Go and interview these people and tell me what they give you in terms of a listing appointment. It sounds schemy, but it is. I find out what my competitors are saying in listing appointments. I know how to leverage. If they tell me, well, I'm talking to so-and-so, great, can't wait to meet with you tomorrow at 5 o'clock, because then I'm going to focus the listing presentation on all of the weaknesses that they have in their presentation. So I set myself apart and they know what they're working with. It's incognito, but it is pretty savage, and it works because that's how I beat out my competitors, is that I know.
So it sounds to me that the main services you're offering are your flexibility with your time and setting your own standards, but also all of your marketing. I mean, that sounds like the biggest seller.
Marketing's huge. I mean, to me, to go over the marketing aspect right now, we're gonna need another hour. But the way that I break it down in my presentation is that I can justify to them that yes, you are going to be marketed on every national and international real estate website. That is your standard platform. You have the looky-loo websites, and I have statistics that show the numeric data that you see of how many views you get on Zillow versus the actual data of who is a ready, willing, able buyer that's an actual consumer. From there, I can show them on my personal websites how I can pinpoint that particular consumer and provide them with additional insight and information. Because let's face it, when they're on a website, they're not giving you a phone number or an email address that is 100% always accurate. You're chasing your tail with someone from Timbuktu who doesn't really have that phone number. But what I can pull is I show, for example, on one of my personal websites, I can pull the IP address of a consumer and I can send them additional information. Just like when you click on a product and you don't purchase that product is advertised all over your search engines, even if you're not looking at it.
Yeah,
I give that information and they eat it out of the palm of my hand. And it's accurate. I've spent a lot of money on researching how to narrow down that consumer, because we can put a house on the market and yes, you are going to market to the general public. But my whole thing is that I cut the fat in every process. So how are we going to find that best buyer who's going to pay top dollar out of my marketing ventures? And where are we going to get the highest percentage of retention from consumers that are likely to buy this house? I've got a house in Clintonville coming on the market next week at $419,000. I can tell you that the average demographic that's purchasing in that price range are millennial buyers. How are we going to pinpoint the millennials who are spending an arm and a leg on the prices versus maybe someone who's a little bit more conservative, may want to purchase this house as a downsizer because it has a first floor primary suite, but really won't perform. They're not going to be the strongest buyer in that whole minutia. That's great that they wrote an offer, but at the end of the day, it takes one to buy, and I'm here to get you top dollar. This is information and data that I give. You can mold your presentation however you want it. You can focus on things more than on others, but really you need to give facts on you to really sell yourself in this market, in my opinion.
I mean, that is a little bit challenging because I am just starting.
It's overwhelming. So going back to what I did when I was monitoring things, I did not tell anyone that I knew personally unless they just found out that I was a real estate agent. I was like, I am getting my license in the recession. I was a sophomore in college. I went to Ohio State full-time at Fisher College of Business. I would take the 7 a.m. classes with all the dorks basically and be out by 12 and I was done. And then I would go bust my tail and sell real estate in the recession. And that's how I operated. I was 19 years old. People would say, how old are you? When I go into an appointment, and I would lie and say I was 27 years old. What I would give to say I'm still 27 years old. It's funny how that all happens. But with that being said, I get where you're coming from. So what I did was that first year is monitor teams and groups, get connections with admins on teams and groups and see how they structure the business. When they get a listing call, how do they put together a listing packet and structure that? This whole business and the efficiency of how I can do over 100 units by myself with no admin is solely based off the fact that I am structured. So every single process in this business, I have a system in place where it is literally very easy for me to jump in, put my systems together for whatever call that is, and boom, I'm done. Like when I go into contract on a property, everything's on my Google Calendar in terms of the timelines. I put a 3-day prep period for like when the appraisal or the loan commitment is supposed to be and all of that good stuff. It is all situated that first hour I go into contract and I process the contract. I don't have to touch anything until I get a request to remedy or when the appraisal schedules the appointment, and my title company knows my systems now down pat where they handle all the minutia in the back. So my processor will not call me at all. She handles all of my fires before they come unless she knows that she needs to bring it to my attention. I have trained anyone that I'm affiliated with on how I work. So all my lenders know, do not call me for X, Y, and Z unless it's a problem, and they know how to handle it. They know when they have one of my clients that call them, they give a certain presentation about how they work with me and how they will work with the consumer so that the consumer does not bug me with a bunch of questions like, hey, I talked to the lender and we talked about this and we rehashed the whole conversation. They know it ahead of time before they even talk to me.
Right.
So again, cut the fat in your process. So if you are a new agent and you're just starting this, build your systems so that when you take off and solely focus on just sales, you've got your systems in place. You're not scrambling with new business, not knowing how to handle that new business. That's the best advice I can give.
Thank you.
Of course.
So who's your processor?
At Northwest?
Oh, this is what you're saying at Northwest.
Yeah, I don't have an admin.
I was wondering if do you have a transaction?
I've got nothing. I'm by
Nothing.
myself.
You
I've
do it
always been
all.
by myself. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you have time.
People think I'm crazy, so you never know. I have time though because of my systems. I mean, a lot of people are like, this guy doesn't sleep at night. I can't tell you how many rumors go around that I have no life in this industry, and I think it's the biggest joke ever. I laugh in their faces. I'm done usually by 7 o'clock at night, unless I've got a deal that needs my attention, which means I am negotiating. Then yeah, I'm focusing on that. Or if I get a listing phone call. A lot of times I will let things go to voicemail if it's after 7 and I don't know that number, but then I listen to voicemail, and if it's a seller, I'm on the phone within 5 minutes. Those are the only two circumstances where they are money generating opportunities for me, where I will work past the 7 o'clock hour. On weekends, I've got a flex day and a busy day. So usually I'll do a Saturday where maybe there are times. Last week I had 8 appointments. So I did everything on an hour basis with a 30-minute commute back to back to back to back to back. It sucked. I worked from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., but I knocked out all the traffic so that Sunday I had no appointments. I was completely free. I come in for an hour or two to just get paperwork or prep for the week, and then I'm done. And so I get one of my weekend days all to myself. And I'm building a house right now, and it's a nightmare. So that's usually when I go and I'm in the fetal position of everything that's wrong with this house.
Who's your builder?
Romanelli Hughes.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't love me right now. So let's not.
I won't
probably go
mention your
there.
name.
Yeah, Vic Romanelli said, Jeff, we love when you bring us clients. We hate you as the client.
And what location are you in?
I am moving to Verona and Powell.
Oh, in Powell.
Yep. Do you want to move with me?
Yeah.
I've got some space.
Okay.
Any other
You heard
questions?
that, guys.
I want to know how you ask for the business back. Once your presentation is over, do you ask if they have any questions? Do you ask them if they're interviewing other agents, or how do you get the listing agreement?
So in terms of asking for the business or what I'm up against, it's always in the phone call when they call. I always will ask point blank. I don't say, are you talking to agents? I say, where are you in this market process? I don't like to necessarily suggest to go talk to other agents, but I will tell you 9 times out of 10 with that answer, I will know if, oh yeah, we're talking to a few agents and we wanted to call you, or we got you referred by so-and-so and we're going to start with you. Listen to the keywords, and that's how I troubleshoot. From there, if they do say that they're talking to other agents, I will point blank ask, oh great, who are you talking to? I have had maybe very few times when you put people on point where they say, well, we rather not say. And I say, that's fine. What brokerage do they represent? And then I can basically pinpoint who they're talking to, especially if it's in my competitive region. In general, if it's like, for example, I've got a 15% market share out of New Albany. If they tell me that they're talking to HER, well, 9 times out of 10, it's Sandy Rains. I know that. That's fine. If they're talking to Remax Consultant Group out in New Albany, they're talking to the Ackermans. Like, this is what you know when you're in the business. You start to see those type of trends. So I will structure my business accordingly. If I don't know who the individual is, then I will hit them on my market share versus the brokerage. And I will tell you, there are certain firms where I individually sell more than a whole brokerage does. I mean, there's just certain things that you can spend to make it good for you and what you're doing individually. In terms of how to seal the appointment, generally in that pre-list call, I will say, what is your timeline in this process of how you are going to commit to me or to an agent, depending on if they say they're interviewing or not. And usually they'll say, well, hopefully we will have a decision by the end of the week. Great. What I typically will do is if they don't sign with me at the end of the appointment, I don't press for them to sign. Usually that kind of gives a little bit of a pushback where it's like, this guy is gross and high pressure sales. So generally what I will do is, instead of a thank you note after I go to the appointment of how great it was to meet with you, I say, I am going to email you and follow up with X, Y, and Z of what we've discussed today, just so you have it in front of you. I will leave them a booklet as well, which just has the market data. It doesn't have any of my marketing or what I do, because they're going to give that to a competitor, and I don't want that out there. So no one can use what I've used today in this presentation. But with all kidding aside, I structure it so that I can pinpoint continuing to communicate with the dialogue and relationship. And if I can get them through email where I request that they confirm receipt, I then will set the next step in terms of when I'm going to communicate with them again, so that I'm in front of them and it's just not awkward and we're not talking after I just went on a listing appointment and sold my soul to them.
you ask to be the last person in?
First person.
Oh, you want to be the first person?
Mhm.
Okay,
You'd be surprised after I'm done with an appointment.
they'll sign up right then.
Yeah, they don't want to go through this process again. Either they were just so tired by everything I just gave them, or they thought I was very qualified and it's not worth it at this
Right.
point.
Great.
So what's that initial, what does that, what you say, like, are you ready to work together? Are you ready to sign my listing agreement so I can get started marketing your house? Like, what is the verbiage?
So generally, it's, after we go through this, do you have any questions? And then from there, I say, when would you like to get started? And from that standpoint, they're gonna say, well, we may need to talk to this person. Great, well, then I'm gonna follow up with you by tomorrow. And then what I'm gonna do is set the precedent that after that appointment with that client, I'm going to follow up with you again and see what I can do. If I can get them on a phone after they've talked to another agent, and if they say, well, this agent said X, Y, and Z, great. Then that's when I troubleshoot and try and save basically me getting the listing again. So when you go up against me, we're not done after day one. I am still gunning for that business. Generally, what does happen is we've met with them, we want to go with you, great, and I send all the electronic paperwork to them right away. So they get the listing consult packet and they get the electronic documents for the contract, and I push it that way. I don't bring listing paperwork to appointments anymore because I feel like they expect that. Sometimes if they're getting kind of anxious and they tiptoe around it, I will even tell them, you're not signing anything with me today. I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
And I take them at their word, and then I send them the listing paperwork literally the hour I'm in the car if I leave the appointment, and I know they want to work with me. And the reason why I do that is I prep the listing paperwork when I prep the consultation. I'll go into my car, get on .loop, press send, and they've got the listing packet while I'm backing out of their driveway. I'm quick, because let's face it, they could go talk to someone and go sell it pre-market, even after they just said that they verbally committed to you. I'm not that naive. I just had it happen to me this morning. I went on an estate sale and some investor just slimed his way in and took a listing from me. Shame on me for not doing what I did, but with estates, it's a little different. There's an emotional component to it, and there's an attorney involved, and I've got to follow the attorney's rules. And this attorney is like, don't pressure my clients. So it's all situational. What I would say is, if what I'm saying to you sounds all well and good, but yet there's kind of a middle ground of how do I go about doing it? You just have to get to know these people, follow what they're doing, and try and work around it with a little bit more of a sales pitch to it. We all can do it. We're all in sales. It's just a matter of how you go about doing it and what your approach is to it.
So what I say, you needed me here
I did need
earlier. Obviously, you've got your act together,
Thank you.
but.
I like that you called it an act.
Has anyone want to negotiate your commission?
Yes, so what I went over with that is basically defining how I charge the commission that I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so you have it all.
What they're getting.
Yep.
They're getting.
What it's
And the
broken
price.
down to the dollar of what I'm spending, and I explain to them. For example, if I'm charging we can't talk commissions. Yeah, look at Karen, rule follower.
I
over here.
am.
She's been in enough meetings with me where she's just like, he said that, and so that's why she goes, no. X commission, you will get X percentage is what I spend out the door on marketing dollars. From there, X percentage goes to the monthly tax man that I have to pay. X percentage from there will go to what I have to pay being affiliated with my brokerage. From there, that is my net. And then I explain to them, as much as I love this listing, I do not cherish what I am making off of this individual listing. My business is based off of getting referrals like you were referred to me, and for me to get more leverage in the marketplace by obtaining more listings and more buyers. So that they know I'm not gouging them individually. I'm being completely transparent. This is how I have to break down the dollar, just like they have to do it probably with their business. And I will tell you, it is less likely when they see my budgets and all of the research I've done on how I'm defining it, that they're going to say, well, we're not going to knock off that 1%. Or if they do, then I say, great, refer me out to 3 people that you know. And that's what I do typically after closing. And that'll be another class because we're going over a little bit. But how I go about getting the referral after I've closed a deal with a consumer. Make up your loss somewhere else.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How many of your sellers become buyers?
Last year, I serviced, I think, 24 clients that were dual clients is what I call them, listing and buys.
Where were the other people going? What were they doing? And,
I had a lot of relocation.
oh, really?
Yep, out of state
Yes.
or people who maybe already bought or had a property in mind. I mean, there was a lot of situations that were completely foreign to me last year. I mean, generally speaking, my deals are the back-to-back deals.
And when they were going out of state,
Mhm.
were you able to get referrals?
I always do that. Yep, that's part of the resources that I go over with them.
Mhm.
Where if you don't have much information to follow up with, follow up that email after the appointment with your resources. A lot of people are like, I'm not going to give my secrets out. There are no secrets. We all have a general contractor. We all have a lender. Great. But I am going to give them that business because a lot of my clients that I work with, for example, when my lenders talk to my clients, they're talking the Jeff Mahler show, how great it is to work with Jeff, how he has a high success rate. I've told them I want them to talk to my clients about this. They're there as a reflection of me and my business. And so it's annoying and I get it, but they do it. And I know what they're saying to my people. And so at that rate, I'm comfortable if they use them. And I will know that if my clients are steering and talking to other buyers agents, my lenders will call me and tell me. And then I'm back on the phone with those people selling my soul. So I have a lot of reinforcements, even though I'm just an individual agent, which some of us out there, we got to stick together. Individual agents, I have love for you. I'm looking at you. I know you're really good. That's right. Any other questions?
How do you handle the statement when you're asking questions on the phone to a prospective listing? And they say they're interviewing 7 agents.
I usually will just cut to the chase of getting me in before those 7 agents. I ask why, what is prompting you to want to go through that process? And have you been through that process yet? And usually a lot of times I say, I would prefer to be the first appointment in just so I can set that standard for you. So I usually follow it up with something that is going to confirm or leverage my position with that appointment.
Do you ever just say, thanks for your time and call me later or anything like that?
No, especially in this market, this sounds terrible. I'll shovel shit to make $1. I don't care. I mean, I had a client come to me last week. Hey, a family member wants to purchase from us. We're so sorry. We really do want to work with you, blah, blah, blah. Great. Who's handling your transaction for you? Well, we were thinking of calling an attorney. Have you talked to your attorney yet? No. Do you know what the attorney is going to charge you? Not so much. Well, let me tell you what an attorney will charge you. On ballpark, it's $500 to $700 an hour. I said, by the time you get through this entire process, because you remember when I represented you on the purchase side, how many hours do you think we talked on the phone? Oh, wow, that's a lot of money. I will charge you a flat fee of X. That's going to cut out my marketing budget of what I'm going to do. It's going to still be income for the time that I'm spending doing that. And you are salvaging the deal and you're getting a unit, which at that point, I'm going to market the hell out of that unit and leverage the neighborhood so I can go get a listing and make up my loss of what I didn't get percentage wise.
Has anyone said no to you?
I've had no's. I will tell you right now, there's an agent that's a fun competitor of mine. And this house is in Arlington and it's been on the market for 2 weeks. I cannot solicit technically because they're under an exclusive. However, when I have emails that go out, I can tell when the recipient picks up my emails looking at my stuff. So from there, it usually gauges that they are communicating with me. Luckily, this person is. So I sent them a welcome package basically of, hey, you're still on the market. I got them a bunch of teas, which I knew she loved when we had talked about it. Basically like a little gift basket.
Right,
I sent it over to the house and they're still on the market and I'm in front of them.
yeah.
I got a call last night. They're thinking of firing the agent. They're not getting the result they
In
want.
2 weeks.
Right, because they went with a price that was very ambitious, which I told them, I'm not gonna be transparent with you. I'm not putting my name on that price. I told them, I said, I'd love to get this house, but I cannot do it. It was 150,000 over what I had said. I mean, you wanna talk about bonkers, and this thing's over $1 million. I
Yeah.
want that listing. I worked for that listing. But at the same token, there's reality here and I'm not gonna be a joke. So with that being said, they're willing to come to
So they
Jesus
went for the
basically,
price.
and
Yeah.
we're going to talk about it and I'm gonna work with them. So
Good.
yes, I do stay in touch, but I follow the rules. I keep them engaged. And when they're engaged with me,
Yeah. you're
they
right
get
in there.
marketing that says I am not soliciting at the base. Any other questions? You guys have been awesome. This was so fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
If you need anything, I am upstairs. Take an immediate left, and I am the second door on the left. My door is always open. It's across from Rachel. Most people know where her office is. Stop in anytime. I'm more than happy to talk to you. I chit chat with everybody. It's almost obnoxious, but I'm happy to help you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank
you.
Thank you.